Hello everyone, welcome to Arizona Azbillwatch for another lively discussion of important and controversial bills. I am your host, Jose Borrajero. Thank you for watching. There is a lot going on at the Capitol these days, so stay tuned because we have a fantastic show for you today. But before we do that, some housekeeping items. Number one, we would love for you to watch the whole show from beginning to end. However, you may also fast forward to the bills of your choice by using the handy chart that we have placed down below. Secondly, if you like what you see, please make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. It means a lot to us. Third, it costs money to do what we do. So if you like what you see, you may contribute by going to our website, azpeopleslobbyist.com. So with all that out of the way, let's look at the first bill. House Bill HB 2096. Short title, Tiny Homes, Construction, Requirements, Exemptions. This bill was introduced by Representative Barbara Parker, and it will be heard in the House Natural Resources, Energy, and Water Committee on the 23rd. And basically what this bill does is that it provides a way to waive the requirement, the permit requirement for certain homes if they're small enough and they're in rural areas and so on. So Archie, you've been doing some checking into that. What have you come up with?
Well, basically this bill provides that if you're in a rural agricultural residential area, you can go out and without any kind of a permit or any kind of a building plan, and you can build yourself a 600 square foot home. And then as long as it's separated, you can build a 600 square foot garage that's also used for a living facility. And no permits and no building specifications are required. And in my humble opinion, this is a sure thing to create a shanty town. And I don't think we need that.
Well, there are specifications within the bill. What is not required is a county permit, but you still have standards that you have to follow per the bill.
Sure, and under this bill, it allows me to take a scratch piece of paper and draw the plans for it and say, here's what I'm going to build and here's what I'm going to use to build it with. I'm going to go out and find myself some grape stakes somewhere and I'm going to build myself a house. And I'm going to, I'm going to put myself a bathroom in it, and I'm going to have a bed in it, and I'm going to have a kitchen in it. But I don't know, maybe it'll just be a camp stove for the kitchen, and maybe it'll just be a hole in the floor for the bathroom, and that's all that's required by this bill. That's all. You read it. That's all that's required by this bill.
Right, and I agree with the bill because I'm one of those people that if you want to build something on your land, no building permits required, and if it's 600 foot or less, I don't have a problem with that. I understand what you're saying, that it can lead to that, but if it's your property, I think that this is a good bill.
What if you're living next door to the person who puts this on their property, and it's within 200 or 300 feet? It only has to be within 200 or 300 feet of your house. All right, and you can have a shanty town there going. This is not a good idea.
Okay, so with that being said, in the bill, and I don't recall seeing this, does it limit the number of structures?
No.
Okay, so, and with that being said, that's the problem that I would have with it. That it needs to limit that if you're going to build this, you're allowed to build one, but you can't build a little community.
You can build two.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
And they can be connected by a breezeway.
Right, which I don't have a problem with that.
Well, I don't have a problem with it either. I have a problem with the entire concept. A 600 square foot house with no plans and no provision for what you're going to build it out of. I have a real problem with that. Tar paper shacks is what we're going to wind up getting. We're going to have a shanty town. No, not a good idea.
Okay.
I see both of it. So.
No, I look at from a different point of view. I look at from the point of view that this is a rural area. This is where, by definition, this would be a very sparsely populated area. So you're not going to have a whole lot of neighbors looking at your shanty. That's not going to be a big problem. And it enables people to build homes without having to go through all the red tape that the counties put on you. So I think there's two sides to any story, and this is one of them.
Yeah, well, I've lived in the state of Oklahoma, and I've seen some of these rural areas where we have people building these kinds of things, and it ain't pretty. You really don't want it.
Okay, so we have a disagreement on that. You folks, you decide whether you would support or not, and feel free to do whichever you want, as usual anyway.
Go on the legislative website, read the bill, and then you can use your request to speak, and you can be for it or against it. And I urge you to be vociferously against it.
Okay.
House Bill 2097, short title, Gray Water Definition, Residential Standards. It's going to be heard in the House Natural Resources, Energy and Water Committee on the 23rd. It was introduced by Representative Barbara Parker. And this is basically a water conservation measure. It allows people to use the what we call gray water in order to water for certain uses, and there is a lot of restrictions as to what you can use this for. For those people that may not be all that familiar with it, the basic definition of gray water versus what is usually called black water. Black water is one that has human waste in it. Gray water is just like sink and that type of thing. So it is a water conservation measure, and it's a shame to use potable water to water your plants if it can be done safely. So that's what this bill tries to accomplish.
And I'm in agreement with this bill. Anytime we can recycle water, I think that's what we need to do.
And because of the restrictions within the bill, this will be a safe way to do it. There will be no problem doing this.
Well, this also deals with the question of, if you're in an outlying area where you can recapture gray water and provide for basically a semi-purification or cleaning up of the water. So that deals with what the part of it is, but what you can use the gray water for. And I don't know that there is any particular problem with this bill, except that I would like to make sure that they find some way of separating gray water from effluent water. And if there's no provision for separating the two, then I would be.
Well, it doesn't say specifically how, but there is a provision for separating the two.
I understand, but
whenever
a bill is not complete in and of itself, then you have to refer to something else, and all of a sudden you find yourself in a quagmire of which one controls.
And are you referring to the gray water versus drinking water? Is that what you were referring to?
Effluent water is runoff water, basically.
Oh, okay.
So, if you have gray water, and you have gray water that you're using around your farm to water your lawn, and then you have affluent water, which is rainwater basically, and it runs into a common pond. It runs across the ground where the gray water is being used, and there's no provision for the separation and the purification. Then I think you may have a problem with creating the gray water going into effluent water, and thereby into drinking water, which is used for cooking.
So what's your bottom line? You like the bill? You don't?
No, I like the bill, but I think it's a start.
It's a start.
Okay.
I'll go with that.
House Bill HB 2120, short title, Law Enforcement Defunding Prohibition. This bill was introduced by Representative Marshall, and it's going to be heard in the House Military Affairs and Public Safety Committee on the 22nd. Basically, what it does is it prohibits cities and towns from having a law enforcement budget which is lower than the one we had for the previous year. In other words, it's aimed at the current movement that seems to be around, calling for defunding the police. And Archie, do you have anything to say about that?
Well, there's been lots of talk over the last several months about defunding the police, and I think a number of areas have actually defunded the police, and I think the city of New York has, to a degree, defunded their police, and look at the problems that they're having now. This bill basically says that any city or town in the state of Arizona cannot reduce in their budget from one year to reduce the amount that they provide to their policing departments, which in essence is a matter of defunding the police. Now, what it then provides that if a city or town, for whatever reason, reduces their budget that they're giving to the policing department, then the Secretary of State will then take the amount of that reduction from the state shared funds that the state shares with the various cities, towns, and counties, and they will hold that against the city. I'm not really quite sure exactly how that benefits anybody. If they were going to say, well, then the state will use that money to pick up the balance of the policing department's budget, then that would be fine, but it doesn't say that. It just says that they're going to withhold. So if the city of, let's say the city of Phoenix, reduces its budget to the police department by $1 million, then the secretary will take from the money that the state gives to the city of Phoenix, $1 million, and hold it. Well, what's going to happen to the money?
What happens to the money?
What happens to the money?
Okay, but the reason for that is not so much what happens to the money, although that is important, but the reason for that is to make it so that it's very unlikely that the city would do that. It is an encouragement to the city or discouraging the city from defunding the police.
Oh, sure. I fully understand that.
Now, what you're saying is that there should be something in the bill that says the money would be disposed of in such and such a manner.
There's nothing in it. It just says the Secretary of State's going to hold the money.
Right.
How many years is she going to, centuries is she going to hold the money, or the Secretary of State going to hold the money? I don't know.
All right.
What happens to the money?
But the basic idea is what? Good? Bad? What?
Well, I mean, if the money that the Secretary of State withholds then goes to the police department of that town, then I think it would be a good idea. But this really doesn't prohibit a city from reducing the budget to the police department. It just says they don't get the revenue that would otherwise come from shared monies with the state. I think
my guess is that most cities would not do that, and if they do, and they have other funding mechanisms to where they don't feel the pinch of the withholding of that revenue, then I guess the state is free to use it elsewhere.
Well, but I mean, this is one of the exceptions that's contained in this bill, that if the city or the county or the town or whatever doesn't have enough funds, if their budget is shortfalling, then they're entitled to reduce the budget to the police department, and no money will be withheld.
Yeah, right, but that's a different situation.
I understand.
That's a situation where they actually don't have the money because of whatever reason.
I fully understand that.
And to your point, that's part of this problem is it's not fully thought out. This bill is not fully thought out.
Mm-hmm.
Folks, have you ever seen a bill that was fully thought out?
No, that's the problem.
Look, we have something to work with, and we don't have the luxury of amending bills. We can only observe and comment, okay? So we comment on what we see, and what I see here, I'm in favor of.
For the premise of it, yes.
Right. So it's up to the other people to amend it to where it would be more palatable to people like me and Archie and so on.
Correct.
Fees, clubs, organizations. This bill was introduced by Representative Culloden, and it's going to be heard in the House Education Committee on the 23rd. Basically, what it does is that it makes it so that universities, when they use student fees that are paid by students and tuition and so on, if they use those monies to fund any kind of club or organization, it has to be evenly done. In other words, it cannot be preferential to one organization versus another, and which I think it's actually a good thing. Lately, we have seen that sometimes the university personnel have a tendency to favor some clubs versus others, and this will make it so that they're more even-handed. And I don't know if Archie agrees with that. Is that what the bill does, Archie, or is it?
Yeah, pretty much. Right, it does. Sometimes when you're reading a bill, they will refer to another code section, and sometimes you have to go to that other code section to kind of get a clear indication of what they're saying with this one. In this particular instance, they refer to Title 15, Section 1626, which allows the universities to set the amount of tuition and fees. Now, if you go to those code sections, there is no distinction. They make no distinction for what the tuition is to be used for as opposed to what the fees are to be used for. There's no distinction on that. But they do make a provision in that 1626 about what employees of the university can do. They cannot participate in trying to get any kind of political action or bill passed. But that doesn't apply to the lobbyists that they may hire. Now, getting back to the question of the things and the fees, they set the fees, but they don't tell what the fees can and cannot be used for in 1626. This bill merely says that the student now has a right to make a determination as to which organization at least a portion of those fees that they pay will go to support. And I think that's a good thing.
Good.
And with that explanation of everything, I agree. The student everything should be equal. There should be no discrimination or anything about what money's going where or how much a student is getting.
Right. So we're all in agreement that this is a yes.
Yes.
House Bill HB 2183. Short title, Parental Rights, Medical Records. It was introduced by Representative Willoughby, and it would be heard in the House Health and Human Services Committee on the 22nd. This bill is very simple. It very simply adds a couple of sentences to the Parents' Bill of Rights, indicating that any medical history or any medical treatment that a child receives, the parent has the right to know what it is. And that applies, and this is important because it applies whether or not parental permission is required for the treatment or procedure. And so it is an enhancement to the already very good Parent Bill of Rights contained within ARS 1602.
Yeah, under Title I, Section 601 and 602, the state of Arizona has enacted a Parent's Bill of Rights, which gives the parent the right to control the medical treatment as well as the education and the places to live and all types of stuff. And basically, this provides that if for any reason that the school, through their nursing facilities or otherwise, shall provide any kind of medical treatment and an emergency basis for the child, then the parent has the right to have a copy of any of those medical records provided to them so that they can either consent or object to it.
No, wait a second. They have the right to have that regardless of whether the consent is necessary or not. Number one. Number two, it includes not only that, but it goes on to say that they have access to the portal, so they can do this via online as opposed to having to wait until they get a written or
Equivalent access to any electronic portal.
yeah.
Well, while I didn't say this, I think it applies. We're now dealing with those situations in which many states, and Arizona has considered it also, where we're talking about gender identity and the medical treatment of drugs and operations and stuff, and whether or not the minor can say, well, I may, by gender, I may be a male, but I feel like I'm a female, so I want to have the medical treatment. Now, there are provisions around in other places in which the parent doesn't have a right to have those records. And this is basically saying, yeah, you do. Yes, and I think that's a good thing.
Yes, it is an enhancement of the Parents' Bill of Rights.
Yes.
And all I have to say, because we're going to talk on another bill, but I agree, but the part that always, and with one of the other bills that we're going to talk about, is that these say, unless otherwise required by law. So if there is another law out there, as I said, we'll talk about this later, that if it gets passed or what have you, these laws are going to contradict each other, because if it's saying this, but then in another law, it's saying something different, saying that the child can withhold consent from the parent, then my interpretation of what that is saying is that that's moot.
Yeah, oh, well, but that's always the case. Every bill that you see here, anytime there is a provision, it says one of two things. It says, unless prohibited by law elsewhere, or it say, notwithstanding any other law. Those are the two phrases that they use. And in this case, they're saying, yeah, this applies, but it's not going to contradict whatever is said elsewhere. If they wanted to override everything else, it would have read, notwithstanding any other law.
And that's the problem I have.
Well, it's not a problem. I mean, that's the way it is.
So on the premise of this, I agree with it. I have a problem that it can, because of another law that we're going to talk about later.
That's where lawsuits come in.
Yeah.
Go.
House Bill HB 2246, short title, Purple Star School Designation Requirements. This bill was introduced by Representative Payne, and it will be heard in the House Education Committee on the 23rd. What this basically does is that it recognizes that children of military personnel often do a lot of moving from one place to another, which puts a lot of stress on the child. And that often leads to problems, psychological problems down the line. What this aims to do is reduce the probability of that happening by having special counseling and treatment and so on and so forth, which I think is a good thing. Where I have a problem is that it includes not only the children of those military personnel who are bound to be transferred and the child going from one place to another, it also includes the children of veterans. And those are not likely to experience the same type of situation, because once you're a veteran, then you're no longer subject to reassignment or transferring or any of that. So other than the fact that it includes the veterans, which I am not happy with, I think it's a good bill. But Archie, Archie's known to disagree with me occasionally, right?
May I
Once
just give a
in a
little
while.
opinion about this?
Do what?
May I just give a little opinion about
Well, that's
this
what you're here.
first?
That's what you're here
I know.
for.
So let me go first on this one real quick. I understand everything you say, but I'm not for this bill. I just do not think that we need another government payment to the schools. And I'm patriotic. I love our military, but we're seeing, and there may not be very many children in the schools that this applies to. So I think this is just another way to get more money from the state for services that should already be provided in the school.
Okay, well, your objection is duly noted.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm glad you put that out there. So, well, first of all, it refers to a Purple Star school. I've never heard of a Purple Star school before.
Now
so
you
one
have.
of the things that I got busy doing is going through the
Researching.
education code, which is Title 15, to see if I could find any reference to a Purple Star school. And to, I guess, not my surprise, there is no provision in Title 15 to a Purple Star school. So I started looking again and trying to find out what is a Purple Star school. And it turns out that it is a national organization,
Right.
MEC, and I don't know what MEC stands for, but it's MEC. We can understand that Arizona also has an MEC, which refers to some of their colleges for, basically, trade schools, that type of stuff. But at any event, what
Maybe
it provides
military
for
education
is that a school can agree that they will provide these services to children of military families. And an individual in military duty, they find that every 2 to 3 years, their duty base is changed.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever they change, if they've married and if they have children, then their spouse and their children follow them to the new. And this may happen during a school year. So basically, it says that a school can agree that they're going to have one individual in that school that is going to then get special training and special education how to assimilate those new transfers into their current school. And I think that's a very, very good idea, because if you have a 10-year-old that every 2 years is moving from one school to the next, they've got to assimilate into that new school, and at 10 years of age or thereabouts, they need help in doing that. And I think this is an excellent bill.
And I agree with that, but as I say, that's why these schools have counselors already. They should already be trained in all of this. So I don't feel the need to be putting more money into something that the schools should already be providing.
I understand that. I don't necessarily disagree with that, but I think the concept is a good concept. The idea is that the student of military personnel is being given somebody in the school system that is cognizant of what their needs are and is there to assist them in acclimating themselves into the new school system.
And I agree with that.
Okay, so in terms of the bill support, we have 2 yeses and 1 no.
Correct.
House Bill HB 2311. Short title, School Enrollment Preference Armed Forces. This bill was introduced by Representative Grantham, who introduced this bill, and it will be in the House Education Committee on the 23rd. This bill is actually quite simple. All it does is that it extends charter school enrollment preference to children of members of the armed forces, United States Armed Forces. And it applies to 2 kinds, the ones that are actually in active duty now and those who have been killed in the line of duty. Since we do have preferences for enrollment for certain types of students, it's only natural that we should have a preference for the children of military personnel and those who were killed in the line of duty.
Well, the state of Arizona, the school districts in the state of Arizona frequently have and they take the position that we're full. And if you want to go to a school, you have to go somewhere else. And this bill addresses that as it relates to military children. And it says, okay, you may say you're full, but you're not. I'm a military child, and I'm coming into the area, and I have the right, and I want to go to your school, and you will make a provision for me. And I think that is absolutely a great idea because so many of these schools, they have limitations on students transferring from one school to another, and that, in my humble opinion, is just not a good idea. I think this is a good bill.
I agree with everything you said, so.
Well, so we have
That's
agreement. All three
yeah,
of us
that's a simple
agree
one.
on something?
Yes.
That's something to celebrate.
Strange. Okay.
House Bill HB 2448. Short title, School-Based Health Centers Requirements. This bill has been assigned to the Appropriations Committee and the House Health and Human Services Committee. It is an appropriations bill, so it has to go through the base committee, which would be, in this case, will be House Health and Human Services, and also the Appropriations Committee. And but it has not been assigned, it has not been scheduled for a hearing yet. And I have a sneaky suspicion it's not going to, because this is a terrible bill. What it does, in my opinion, is that it basically converts many schools into health facilities.
Into what?
Healthcare facilities for the children.
Absolutely.
And that is a step in the wrong direction. But Gloria, you have some opinions on this that I think we should.
Yes, I do, and I am really tired of the education system pretending that they are doctors. They have nurses to attend when a child is sick. That's what it should be. They should not be healthcare providers, and this is what this is doing. And it says must obtain verbal or written informed consent from the patient or the patient's healthcare decision maker. So here again, you're putting this decision into the child.
Well, either the child or the decision maker, which would be either the guardian or the parent.
Right, but still, you're giving that child that opportunity. And these children are not, they're not capable of making decisions like this. And it's not going to be just for a headache or anything like this. As I said, I'm really done with the education system getting into the healthcare industry. That is not what they're there for.
No, this is a terrible bill, in my opinion.
Oh, and also, one of the things that they're going to be tracking is the percentage of appointments in which a student's parent was not present.
Why would
I mean, this is just ridiculous. It shouldn't have even been introduced. I don't like any of this. Go ahead.
It provides for the school district to enter into a contract with a healthcare provider to open an office either on the school ground, while that's not clearly set forth, or in close proximity to the school ground.
No, it said so, that it can be within the campus.
So, but it's in close proximity, so to provide care for these children. And all right, now, is the school now becoming a medical care provider?
And that's what all this is headed towards.
And to me, that creates a problem, because you see, and I can remember one instance long ago in which a child was in need of a transfusion in order to save the child's life, but the parents were opposed to any kind of medical care. Now, if that comes the case here, then the school district and you and I as taxpayers are now subject to a lawsuit for medical malpractice. And the school district is subject to it for medical malpractice. And I just don't think that's a good idea. I think that needs to be left to the doctors and the medical profession, and not the school Board of Education.
Absolutely. And this also goes back to our previous discussion on the Parents' Bill of Rights. As I said, and it goes back to that one that we talked last week about. If they're saying patient, if the child says, I don't want my parent to have any access to anything, then that applies to this. And this is just so bad.
Okay, so we are in agreement that this is not a good bill.
Correct.
House Bill HB 2542, short title, Foster Children Educational Support. This bill was introduced by Representative Jones, and it will be heard in the House Education Committee on the 23rd. This is a very simple bill. All it does is that it says that whenever a child enters foster care, that there should be an evaluation to determine whether this child needs special attention, special needs. And that makes sense because a lot of times the reason why they are in foster care to begin with is because there is some kind of a problem.
Right.
So this bill makes a lot of sense to me. But Archie, you may disagree with that. What is your take on it?
No, I agree with that.
You do, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
I know that'll come as a shock to you, but
I know. But
I think this is a great bill. It provides within 15 days, and another provision within the bill provides for within 5 days. So that's a 10-day difference. I'm not sure that we should allow the 10-day difference. I think that once the child it becomes a foster child, then we need to start moving on it
Absolutely.
sooner than the 15 days.
And Gloria, what do you think about that?
I agree with that, that they need to be evaluated, and
Okay, so we're all in agreement that this is a solid yes.
it
Right.
should be earlier than later, but yes.
Yeah, folks at home, if you watch and if you pay attention and if you believe us, which then our suggestion is that you contact your legislators and express your support for this bill. Senate Bill SB 1008. Short title, Voter Registration Event Posting. This bill was introduced by Senator Hoffman and is going to be heard in the Senate Elections Committee on the 22nd. This bill is what I refer to as a transparency bill because it requires that any voter registration drive that happens has to be posted so that people know what's happening and what they're doing and so on. Gloria, I don't know if you have an opinion on this. Have you looked into it?
I do have an opinion, and I agree with this bill. I think that there should be transparency in our government. There isn't enough of that, and if this requires that the county recorder and the Secretary of State post on their websites that when they will be in attendance at voter registration events, I think it's a good thing.
Archie?
Well, this, if you read the caption of this, it repeals section title 16-133, and then it adds a new title 16-133. And so I went back to the old code section to see just exactly if there was a major difference in it. And the only difference is as follows. The listed event shall include at a minimum the location, the title of the event, and all organizations affiliated with the event. So I don't know why we needed to repeal the section just to reestablish it and add those few words to it. But I think it's a good idea. We need to know who's being registered to vote. And we're having an awful lot of people coming across the border illegally, and if they're being registered to vote, we need to know that. So, yeah, I think this is a good bill.
Oh, good.
So we all agree that this is a yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
This brings to an end this week's edition of Arizona Bill Watch. Thank you for watching. If you like what you saw, please make sure you tell your friends, relatives, and anyone else you know. And make sure you tune in next week for another fantastic edition of Arizona Bill Watch.